Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Getting around the south coast and other parts of BC, no easy feat this week as snow blankets the province, slowing down commutes, canceling schools, and making it even harder for those most vulnerable. How are you coping with the winter weather across the province? And in our second half hour, Canada has now secured a 30-day pause on tariffs from U.S. President Donald Trump. What do you make of the temporary reprieve? And are you trying to buy more Canadian goods? I'm Dan Burritt in for Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. Thanks for joining us on radio, TV, and live stream. You can call us now on our top story. How are you coping with this winter weather that has blanketed much of the south coast and other parts of BC? Our numbers are 604-669-3733 in Metro Vancouver. You can also call 1-800-825-5950 across our great big beautiful province, or hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Please be pulled over or hands-free if you're driving. You can also email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. Well, as we said, snow has battered BC's south coast and beyond, from the Fraser Valley to Vancouver Island. Environment Canada says Metro Vancouver will be hit with 2 to 4 centimetres of snow today, but it says that ought to taper off later this afternoon. Still, the cold and the snow made for rough, sometimes treacherous morning commutes and brought with it numerous school cancellations and university closures. For more on a look at the weather, the CBC's Jessica Cheung joins us from North Vancouver at a very busy park. First of all, Jessica, where are you right now, and what are the conditions?
Yeah, Dan, I'm at Reprieve Park in North Vancouver. And yes, as you can see behind me, you can probably hear them as well. There's so many people here at the park, have their sleds out. They're doing snowball fights and all that kind of stuff, making the most of this snow dump that came over Metro Vancouver overnight. Now, conditions here right now are a lot better than they were this morning. The sun is out. It's melting a lot of that snow that fell overnight on the roads that I see on these small roads. It's kind of come down just to slush. The main roads seem definitely less treacherous than they were this morning, Dan.
Okay. And but tell us more about the morning commute, what it was like for you to get over there.
Oh, yeah. Well, this morning it was a bit dicey getting over here, driving this morning to this location in particular. We got into some sticky situations, saw some cars spun out, stuck on the side of the roads, especially on Highway 1 between Mountain Highway and Lynn Valley. We did see a number of cars that were stuck on ramps and on the side of the highway there. Now, Drive BC has said that those incidents have now been cleared. There are also multiple collisions near the Port Mann Bridge, and that caused heavy delays this morning. But yeah, as I said, the conditions are getting a little bit better now, but even so, it's still good to be prepared on the roads. We spoke with a road safety and driving expert with BCAA, and here's some of the advice that he had.
Definitely plan your route, but before you even go, you want to make sure that you're prepared. Prepare yourself, prepare the vehicle, and of course, prepare for the route as well.
Yeah, so Environment Canada says around 10 centimeters of snow fell overnight. And as you said, a few more centimeters are expected this afternoon. But what they're now saying that they're concerned about is the cold air. That cold air is expected to kind of stick around. And so they're concerned about overnight freezing. And temperatures are going to be well below normal. And the weather agency is worried about that freezing that's going to be happening overnight. So they are asking people to take proper precautions. And that includes making sure sidewalks in front of their homes are cleared, that kind of thing, Dan.
All right, good advice. And Jessica, as we can see behind you, for those watching, you are in a very busy park at Reprieve Park. This snow day has meant a lot of schools are closed, and people having fun, though.
Absolutely. There's so much fun being had. And yes, it's because it's one of these snow days that the lower mainland does not see very often. They are quite rare. But yes, North Van and West Vancouver school districts shut down their elementary and secondary schools this morning due to the weather conditions. So I suspect a lot of the kids, parents, adults are here because of that, trying to enjoy the snow. Now, post-secondary schools also closing down their schools or moving their classes online. That includes UBC, SFU, Capilano University campuses in North Van, Lonsdale, and on the Sunshine Coast, Vancouver Community College, Langara College, Douglas College, University Canada West, all closed, all due to the weather conditions this morning.
All right. And just let's pivot to a bit more of the fun. Those huge crowds behind you, what are they doing? You've spoken with some of them that actually get to have some fun today.
Yeah, there's so much fun being had. We're seeing giant snowballs. We're seeing snow castles being built, snowball fights, and of course, sledding and tobogganing. That's what most people are here to do. But we were here early in the morning and people were starting early. They were here, at the wee hours of the morning just to get the first kind of sled down. But lots of fun being had here. Yes, I did speak with a couple people who decided to come out this morning and take a listen to what they had to say. I bought these toboggans last night and we were manifesting a snow day in my classroom and I'm taking my recess break a little early, getting that fresh pow.
She dragged me out.
We got up at 5:30.
Yeah.
But then he went out ice skating on his frozen pond, and then we came out at.
What do you mean by frozen pond?
Well, his ice skating rink. Synthetic ice.
Wow. Yeah, so lots of fun being had here. We're seeing parents, we're seeing kids, we're seeing adults, as you heard, coming out and kind of just feeling like they're kids again out in the snow. But yeah, people are just making the most of this snow dump that we saw, Dan.
The CBC's Jessica Cheung at Ray Perot Park in North Vancouver amid the fun and some of the challenges that Snow Day brings. Jessica, thanks so much.
Thank you.
So tell us about your morning commute and what you're expecting for afternoon and beyond. Give us a call now, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733 is our number in Metro Vancouver. You can call pound 690 on your cell phone and email us bctoday@cbc.ca. So persistent snow across the south coast and Vancouver Island made for some very challenging commutes this morning, as we heard from Jessica. BC Highway Patrol asked drivers to reconsider even getting onto the roads until they were clear. Commutes on parts of public transit were also a slow go. On the Lower Mainland, TransLink told customers to expect delays across the region, bundle up, dress warmly. TransLink's Dan Mountain spoke with Early Edition host Stephen Quinn earlier this morning.
Due to a bit of extra snow in Coquitlam than the rest of the region, Millennium Line trains have attendants at the front of them, which means that there will be slower frequencies than normal on the Millennium Line. So if you're traveling on the Millennium Line, whether in Coquitlam, Northern Burnaby, or into Vancouver, put in a bit, like 10 to 15 minutes extra time if you can. Handy Dart is delivering as much service as possible out there, but of course some of the side roads still have some snow buildup, so they're prioritizing people with medical appointments, work, or with school. Buses, they do have service out there on every route. We have swapped many 60-foot articulated buses for 40-foot buses as they are agile in the snow.
That's Dan Mountain with TransLink. Now, numerous crashes on Highway 1 near the Port Mann Bridge prompted Highway Patrol to ask drivers to avoid the stretch or stay home altogether if that was an option. So how has the winter weather affected your commute? How prepared are you for the conditions? We'd love to hear from you. Give us a call now. Joining us, though, as we get some more perspective, is Corporal Michael McLaughlin. He's with BC Highway Patrol. Corporal, thanks for joining us. You've had a busy couple of days. Situations calmed down from this morning, but give us a sense of how bad the road conditions were earlier.
Well, we don't think we're done. Obviously, the crews have been doing a good job keeping things clear and getting rid of some of that snow from the morning. But with the risk of more ice coming as temperatures stay low, we're reiterating our call to people. Hey, look, if you don't have to drive on the highway, reconsider going on the highway. And if you do, make sure your vehicle's prepared and you're prepared.
Now, crashes along Highway 1 on the Port Mann and the North Shore brought the highways to partially to a halt. How bad did it get this morning for your crews?
Certainly very busy. There aren't enough of us to go around in situations like this, so we rely a lot on our partners with the various police departments around Metro Vancouver and, of course, the ministry workers who are out actually clearing the roads. But these collisions were happening so quickly that it was hard for our officers to get there. Hence the reason we're asking people, stay off the roads if you don't need to be there. Conditions are good now, but as they freeze up overnight, we're probably going to have a repeat for tomorrow.
We're going to get back to you in just a moment, Corporal. Let's go to Mike, who's calling us from Vancouver. Mike, thanks for joining us. How prepared do you feel in the snow and the cold?
Well, thanks for taking my call. I really think that this comes down to a bigger thing that maybe we should just have the province declare a snow or adverse weather day in areas in the province that are affected like this. And everyone can take the day off, improve their mental health, the cost savings alone in ambulatory and policing and all the other hazards associated with winter weather would be saved, and everyone, I think, would be better off for it.
Would cost a lot of money, though, Mike.
Well, what's it cost to replace a senior's hip when they fall and slip on a sidewalk and then end up no longer being independent living and have to live in supportive care? What's that cost? What's it cost to, grieve counsel a family who's lost a precious person in an accident on a slippery road? And, unless you absolutely have to be out there, in the morning, the conditions are treacherous. I see it from Woodland Drive where I live. It's a hill. And just amazing. Half an hour for people to squeal up a half block. They're not prepared. So I think the government should have responsibility and just say, day off, everyone. Enjoy it. And mental health is more important than dollars at this point.
We do know that, for example, our guest, Corporal McLaughlin, because he's a first responder and considered an essential service, that's not an option. Mike, one more question for you, though. What would you say, we've heard this call before, not everybody has winter or mud and snow tires. Would you support mandated winter tires in Metro Vancouver like it is elsewhere in the province?
I think that's a bit, a bit of a heavy club to wheel. I think it's important that people have access to safe public transit. The rare days in the Lower Mainland we have such conditions, don't drive. There's no emergency unless you've got a breached birth with the umbilical cord around the fetus's neck. That's the only emergency. Okay. So I think it's important that we look at this in perspective and we realize that mental health has really significant benefits to society, and stop having to go all the time. And, IQ 47's latest tariff threats are going to cost us more than a day off would.
All right, Mike, thanks for the call. We do appreciate that. Corporal McLaughlin, were there any particular hot spots that you had to watch out for today?
Oh, absolutely. The Port Mann Bridge, as you alluded to earlier, that was a real problem this morning. And you've got a couple of reasons for that. One is the sheer volume. That's obviously one of our biggest and most busy crossings to begin with. But you've also got those approaches, which are hills. Anytime you've got slopes and slippery conditions, throw in there a bit of speed, you're going to have issues. And unfortunately, we had both an eastbound and a westbound problem hit at almost exactly the same time. And it was certainly due to the fact that the conditions were really poor and you had people driving perhaps far too quickly, along with people driving far too slowly, which is actually one of the messages we want to get out to people. You kind of have two extremes in these cold weather situations. One is you have people who are perhaps a little overconfident and they drive too quickly. Those people need to slow down. You also have people who are very much not confident, and often they don't have vehicles that are prepared for the cold and slippery weather. For those people, this just isn't your day. Don't drive in those conditions because you're just going to get yourself in trouble.
Now, I understand that yesterday you, in fact, closed parts of Highway 1 intermittently because you were dealing with crashes, spun out cars, etc. Logistically, how challenging is that?
It's very challenging. You've got a couple of situations. One is, first of all, we don't have an unlimited number of officers. They're out there doing enforcement while also trying to keep the highway safe and open. So what you were talking about there, that happened in Langley, out in a stretch around 216th to 264th. It just turned into an ice rink. And again, there are some pretty significant hills out there. So challenge number one is getting to the problem. Of course, even though we have lights and sirens, there's only so much you can do to get around volume. And problem number two is keeping the road clear enough that those ministry workers can get in and make sure the highway is safe. Now, we did manage to get all that done, but not without some major inconvenience to commuters. And we certainly feel that with people. We understand that nobody likes that. It is frustrating. We're doing the best we can. We do ask that you take some extra time and try to be less frustrated in situations like this.
Let's go to Betty, who's calling us from Vancouver. Betty, what's been your experience in the snow and the ice?
It's been really great. I live on 10th and Alma. I got up, I took my dog over to my neighbor's. I got in my car. I went to my swimming class. Came home, got the dog, went into the woods for an hour. Now we're home.
Do you have winter tires?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Last year I waited too long and had to line up for about 3 hours. This year I went October the 1st, no lineup. and I was wondering if I was maybe going to have to take the snow tires off, but here they are, and they're perfect.
Do you find a benefit beyond the ice and snow? We've heard from those who advocate this, Betty, that they're better in the rain. And full disclosure, I have them as well and have found them to be helpful. What about you?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
They went out. I went down the lane, and there was snow everywhere. I backed out of my garage. I'm in my 80s, and there's no stopping me.
Mm-hmm. Betty, I have to ask, if you don't mind me asking, do you feel confident? Do you feel yourself a little overconfident with the winter tires, or are you still cautious?
Oh, I'm careful.
Mm-hmm.
The lane was bad, and then West 10th all the way to Oak, cleared off, no snow on the road. It was perfect, but I didn't go very fast.
Mm-hmm.
I don't anyway, but I was so happy because I know we've had years where they've been not cleaned off, but now when I went out today, it was about 8:30. It was wonderful.
All right. Betty, we appreciate your call. Glad you're staying safe and that Phoebe the dog is doing well. Corporal Mike McLaughlin is joining us from BC Highway Patrol. Corporal, we heard somebody there, Betty, who appears prepared. In some of the crashes and the slowdowns that you're dealing with, is there a common thread around people who are not prepared?
Well, you've got a couple of things going on. You do have some people who are not prepared, certainly. We run into situations where there are some mechanical issues or indeed summer tires or all-season tires. But you also have people who are overconfident. And in fact, that witch's brew of putting both of those groups together is often the issue. Somebody going too fast along with somebody going too slow. Just a comment on winter tires. I'll stick my oar in on that. There's a couple of things that make a dedicated snow tire much more useful in the winter. One is deeper lugs, deeper treads. So when you describe that they might be better in rain, it's absolutely true because they're channeling the water better. But the other thing with winter tires is they're made of a different compound than summer tires. They grip a lot better when you're talking about these low temperatures. They have that softer compound. So they won't last as long in the summer. When you're talking about winter and you need that increased traction, they're really the way to go. So you want to hit that sweet spot where you have that good equipment on your car and you're not overconfident, but you're also not creeping along at 3 kilometers an hour.
Mm-hmm. And Corporal McLaughlin, I don't know if this is something that BC Highway Patrol would weigh in on. There are places in this province where winter tires or certified mud and snow tires are mandatory. Does the force have a position on whether or not they ought to be mandatory province-wide?
I don't think it would be appropriate for us to take a position per se. We'll leave that up to our legislators. Mm-hmm. But we will say that is something we recommend. I mean, I myself have snow tires, and a lot of people in BC Highway Patrol they're car guys. They're into vehicles, and most of them would tell you that they have dedicated snow tires. That is definitely the way to go. In terms of legislation, that's up to our leaders, and we'll see what they think.
Were there any major injuries from the crashes that you had to deal with?
Fortunately, not today. Everything was limited to some fairly serious vehicle damage, actually. A truck lost its axle, I know, near the Port Mann Bridge. So we're quite happy that nobody got hurt. It is always a risk. And again, we're asking people, slow down a little bit more than you think you need to, especially if you're one of those confident drivers. Nothing substitutes for slowing down when it comes to reducing damage and injuries. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to read an email from, if it's Denis or Dennis, forgive me, I'll go either way. It says, why are winter tires not mandatory in BC? Can't believe it is not as ridiculous, but hey, body shops are making a fortune. No winter tire, no brainer. Denis or Dennis, we appreciate the call, and you heard the comments from Corporal McLaughlin there. Interesting times. Actually, Corporal, what about other first responders? How are they handling what's going on out there? And it's not just police we're talking about. Fire we're talking about. Paramedics, the whole crew that are out there right now.
Obviously, we couldn't keep everyone safe without paramedics and firefighters. We work really closely with those two groups. They both have unique challenges. Obviously, paramedics and ambulances, they have to get to where they're going quickly and safely. ambulances are not the most maneuverable thing in the world. So I'm sure they're having challenges. And fire departments with their even larger vehicles, that's even more difficult. They really struggle, for instance, getting through suburban roadways or highway access points like on-ramps and off-ramps. So it is a struggle for them. We'll help them wherever they can, but the reality is it's the public that has to make extra sure, take extra care around those emergency vehicles. It is also slow down, move over month. And I should mention this because it's a really good time to bring up. When you see one of those emergency vehicles or even a vehicle with amber lights and their lights are flashing and they're stopped at the side of the road, do slow down, use the 70-40 rule. So slow down to 70 if it's a highway speed limit or 40 if it's a slower speed limit, and get away from them. Give them lots of room to work. If you can move to another lane safely, please do that, because we want to make sure those firefighters and paramedics are safe out there doing their jobs.
Just before we come to the end of our segment, Corporal, remind us, for somebody who is thinking of heading out, want to get their car prepared, they may or may not have winter tires. What's the checklist that they ought to go through before they hit the road?
Before you even get in your car, plan ahead. Ask yourself if you're comfortable driving in the snow. If you've never done it before, maybe this isn't the time to start, but plan ahead. Listen to the news, watch the TV, your phone apps if you need to check the traffic. Check your car. Not only are the tires in good repair and they have proper depth and they are snow tires, but you have snow on your car. You don't just have to clean your windscreen. You have to clean every window, every sight point. You also have to clean your roof, your trunk, and your hood. That is a legal requirement. You can get a ticket if you don't do those. And that way, when you have good sight points and everybody can see your car and you're not blowing snow into the car behind you, now maybe you're prepared for that drive. Leave a little bit of extra time because it's going to take extra time to get to where you're going.
Good advice. Corporal Michael McLaughlin with BC Highway Patrol. We appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
It is 12:28, and this is BC Today. We want to get to some of your emails from yesterday. Margot from Haida Gwaii wrote about tariffs. From a personal perspective, she says, I'm deeply saddened by the U.S. president's comments and insults to and about Canada. I have family in the U.S., love to visit them, but I will not until the tenor from the U.S. changes. We must also consider keeping our border open for DEI and members of the LGBTQ plus community to escape from the coming cruelty toward them. A lot of people will suffer in the U.S., and it would be helpful for us to remember that and help where we can. Lily in Roberts Creek on the Sunshine Coast says, listening to the discussion on forestry in Canada, yes to value added here. Way less raw logs exported, please. And what about our forestry industry? Stop burning slash piles and start making biochar. Apparently quite a lucrative market for it and a carbon sink too. Go Canada, Hawkins cheesies forever. That's just a given there for sure. Catherine from Langley writes, I've just spent the morning canceling several of the U.S. subscriptions I've had. One of the things I find most annoying is that neither Canada nor Mexico has mentioned the huge volume of firearms that pour through the border from the U.S. into both of our countries. Why is that never mentioned? And I do know that that has been brought up as a concern before, but it is a good reminder there, Catherine. And Varista writes, yearly I would spend almost $20,000 traveling U.S. traveling and vacationing in the U.S. when I take my 4 kids to Disney World or travel to different states for tourism. This year I'm planning to stay in Canada and would recommend Canadians spend their money on our own economy. Many more emails, and they've already come in. We really appreciate it. Thanks for emailing, and we'll continue to do that. Now it's time for a news update with Robert Zimmerman. You're listening to BC and watching BC Today on CBC. We're on Radio 1, CBC Television, live streaming on our website, cbc.ca/BC, and on YouTube. Coming up just after the news, Donald Trump's tariff threats are paused for now. What do you make of this temporary reprieve? Are you rethinking your shopping habits, wanting to buy Canadian and beyond? Let us know. That's after this news update, now with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. The husband of a Port Moody woman found dead near Hope 4 years ago has been charged with indignity to human remains in connection to the unsolved homicide. Trina Hunt was reported missing in January 2021 and found dead months later. 52-year-old Ian Hunt is now facing this single charge. The BC Coroner Service says the illicit drug supply in BC continues to take a heavy toll. The service says more than 2,200 people lost their lives last year. That number shows a decrease of 13% from 2023 and is the lowest number in 3 years. And a man has been seriously injured after being partially buried by an avalanche on northern Vancouver Island. The man got caught in the slide Sunday near the Mount Cain ski area. Rescue crews say the man was hypothermic and had several injuries. And now the forecast: snowfall, Arctic outflow, and extreme cold warnings are in effect for sections of Vancouver Island and most coastal areas of BC. On the north coast, sunny this afternoon with a high of 2. Highs around -29 with sunshine in the Peace. In the central interior, sunny with a high of -16. Highs from -14 to -3 and cloudy in the West Kootenay, a mix of sun and cloud in the East Kootenay. In the southern interior, mainly cloudy with a high of -9. And flurries this afternoon in Greater Victoria. Some sunshine here in Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley with highs around 0. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zimmerman, and thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1, CBC Television, and again live streaming on our website and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. CBC will have lots more of the day's top stories on our afternoon shows in your region. Here in Metro Vancouver, let's have a look and listen on Coming Up on the Coast.
Michelle, hi there. It's Gloria Makarenko here, inviting you to join us this afternoon for On the Coast. And of course, we are going to continue the discussion around tariffs. And I'm looking forward to hearing the perspective of a Republican. We know the tariffs could come as early as March. So a member of the Republican National Convention, which is based in Washington State, is going to be our guest today. And we're also going to meet a blind skateboarder who is on a mission to support other blind people. He's making a movie about his life and work. So I hope you'll join us and find out more on the Coast this afternoon between 3 and 6.
Gloria, thank you very much. Yes, Michelle is off today, but that's okay. You can hear On the Coast on CBC Radio 1 in Metro Vancouver and anywhere on the CBC News app. Before we get to our second segment, some of you have been good enough to email us about winter tires. Frank says, we need some volunteers to set up in Vancouver GVRD, easy for me to say, region pullover areas on major routes where tires are checked. No snow tires with good tread, no go dudes. I would find people who violate an amount they can afford or they can volunteer for road checks. Do that, no fine. And Judith says, safe winter driving, not just about tires or the speed you drive. You have to know how to drive properly. Don't brake suddenly. Don't pump your brakes slowly. Good advice, Judith. Canadians have been spared a fresh round of price shocks at the grocery store and beyond now that Donald Trump has agreed to pause tariffs on Canadian goods for 30 days starting yesterday. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has pledged to boost border security and appoint a so-called fentanyl czar, among other steps. But as Lindsay Duncombe tells us, Trump's constant back and forth may have boosted the backlash against buying American goods.
To buy California oranges or not, for Greg, the decision is about more than price.
I think, like a lot of Canadians, I don't like to be bullied.
And the pause in tariffs won't change how he shops.
So, every few hours we hear new announcements about they're on or they're off or they might be or this rate or that rate. So, to heck with that. Like, who are we? What do we want? Why should there be a Canada? Do we care enough?
The immediate threat of higher costs may be on hold, but for shoppers, grocers, and food producers, it just means continued chaos and anxiety.
It's kind of like the executioner has just delayed dropping the knife, right? And so you still, the uncertainty level is deferred, but still very high.
Many Canadians feel betrayed by the U.S., and the delay does not restore that trust.
I don't know if we can really view the USA as the reliable partner going forward that we did in the past.
Not everyone, though, has the privilege of shopping with their emotions. Canadian products often cost more.
If it was affordable, I'd buy Canadian.
Do you think it is affordable?
Absolutely not.
Left trying to satisfy all customers and not go broke, grocers like Anthony Sullivan. He ordered these stickers over the weekend and plans to keep promoting Canadian goods.
Asking customers to maybe change their behavior just a little bit. Try that local BC product. If you're used to your regular brand, maybe take a leap and try something different.
And there may even be a way to keep eating oranges. Look what Greg found.
Mexico.
Finding joy in all the uncertainty. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
We're asking you, what do you think about this tariff pause? Do you want to try to buy more Canadian products? Are you looking? How easy is it for you? Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733 is our number in Metro Vancouver, pound 690 on your cell phone. If you're driving, please be pulled over or hands-free. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca, and some of you already have. We appreciate it. I will get to those in just a moment. Joining us for this segment today is our guest, Heather O'Hara. She's the Executive Director of the BC Association for Farmers Markets. Heather, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Remind us, how many food vendors and markets does your association represent?
Well, we have about, on average, about 145 operating farmers markets during the core season, and it fluctuates throughout the year, of course, and about 6,000 BC-based farm food and artisanal vendors who sell at all those farmers markets across the province.
6,000? Wow.
Yes.
And when you say across the province, we're talking about everywhere? Give us, if you can paint us a picture.
100%. So everywhere from Haida Gwaii to Prince George, the Kootenays, Thompson Okanagan, Vancouver Island, Metro Van, City of Vancouver. Our farmers markets are everywhere, believe it or not.
Is the tariff battle, if we can call it that, the threats from the United States, is it a talking point among your members and who you speak with?
Sure. I mean, like fundamentally, BC farmers markets are all about local food, all about local economy, all about BC farm and food entrepreneurs. And ultimately, this tariff crisis has really put the spotlight back on that key differentiator of our sector, which is people who shop and sell at farmers markets are deeply committed to local economy, deeply committed to local food, and buying Canadian and British Columbian.
And remind us, we're deep in winter months, and certainly we're feeling the cold here on the South Coast. Parts of the rest of the province are laughing at us, we know. But what is available right now at the farmers markets?
So a few things. We do have a good dozen or so farmers markets we operate winter markets and do operate year round. In some places you wouldn't expect. Prince George, Masset on Haida Gwaii, for example, many on Vancouver Island, Riley Park here in Vancouver, and a few others, Grand Forks in the Kootenays and elsewhere. So right now there are people and farmers who do sell and have produce available. We do live in a climate that does lend itself to having seasonal vegetables, root vegetables, etc., winter cabbage, for example, and lots of prepared food. So not only direct primary producer foods, but things like relishes and chutneys and hummus and all kinds of other goodies, baked goods, for example, and of course our artisanal goods, artisans, handicrafts, and stuff like that. But there is a very good selection year round. We do have some vendors who also sell their frozen products in the winter. So Mandare Farms, for example, a really significant berry producer in the summer and has frozen berries available in the winter at their Abbotsford Farmers Market, for example, or Port Moody. So there's a lot of options throughout the year. And so forth. But of course, primary season is the summer season. But we do have a great handful of markets that do operate in the shoulder seasons and in the winter right now.
Let's get to our calls now. Blair is joining us from Smithers. Blair, what do you make of the Trump tariff reprieve, if we can call it that?
Well, good afternoon, Dan. And first off, I don't really think it's a reprieve, but I'd like to give a shout out to the Bulkley Valley Farmers Market after Heather's little intro there. I've been supporting for over 30 years and our local producers, but it's got a lot more to do than just buying groceries at the supermarket and veggies. I think we're being played hard and fast like a $10 fiddle here by the Trump administration. And, you know, where I'm calling from here in north central BC, tariffs are not new to us. We have the softwood lumber. We currently have a 14.5% duty. And we're close to Kitimat, which Trump imposed the aluminum tariffs on in his first term. I think this is more of a distraction ploy, and it is working. As the federal government, the media are just totally fixated on it, and I think Mexico and Denmark are doing a little bit better job of dealing with them than we are.
What would you suggest the federal government and perhaps provincial leaders do differently or better, Blair?
Well, the provincial leaders, I sometimes laugh when I hear the Team Canada approach because I've been on a few teams, and you don't want a puck hog or a one-way player, and we all know who that has identified herself as. I would like to give I think that of the premiers, you know, it's not often I agree with Doug Ford, but I think if he's our best hope, you know, at least sometimes it takes a bully to stand up to a bully. Premier Eby's response has been a little more balanced in that he's not going after Washington, Oregon, and California, who are our neighbors, and we're considering, you know, going on a high-speed joint venture with. You have to be a little specific to that. And before I get to my main point, I'd just like to put out about the booing of the national anthems and this and that. I find that somewhat disrespectful. You know, careful what you wish for. And if you have a problem, don't stand up, sit in your seat, and shut up. And, you know, show a little bit of respect for half the players of the team are Canadians. They're not enjoying it.
Yeah, Blair, I'm just going to jump in. We appreciate your call. We've got several more calls on the line. I want to get to those now. Let's go to Sonia in Vancouver. Sonia, what do you make of the tariffs? And are you thinking of buying more Canadian, maybe from a farmer's market?
Hi, Dan. Thanks. Yeah, I really appreciated you having Heather on earlier. I'm a local vendor myself.
She's still on the line, Sonia, so feel free to say hi.
Great. Yes, hi, Heather. Thanks for coming on. I think it's really important to, you know, have us be represented. And I launched my artisanal ghee company last April called Gheelicious, and I've just really loved being present at the farmers market. I think it's a wonderful way of building community and supporting your local economy. And it's just been a huge highlight and change in my life since I started last April. It's funny, my dad said to me the other day, he was like, "Oh, you should start shopping local." And I was like, "Dad, I'm at the farmer's market. That's what I do all the time."
Come down and buy some ghee, Dad. Sonia, I can ask you, and I'll get to this with Heather as well. When it comes to costs, do you expect that if tariffs are imposed again and actually followed through with, that your costs would rise and you might have to pass those along to your customers?
I mean, possibly. I purchase locally anyway. All of my supplies, for the most part, I purchase locally. I get my butter locally, and I flavor my ghee. And most of the flavorings is either from my own family or from other local vendors. I do a cranberry sage, for example. I source my cranberries from Fort Langley from a fellow vendor. And I think it's, personally, I don't think the tariffs will be so bad. I think it's getting people thinking about shopping local and supporting your neighbor and you know, shopping within Canada and purchasing Canadian goods, which I think is actually really a lovely way of building our own community and supporting each other.
Sonia, we really appreciate your call. Thanks very much. Best with the ghee. Heather, I saw you nodding along there a bit. What do you make of what Sonia said?
So I think Sonia's really on point there. You know, a lot of our vendors who sell at farmers markets, there's a few things I'd like to highlight there. One is starting a new farm and food business. Fantastic place to start and launch a business. We are home to thousands of startup entrepreneurs who've gone on to grow out their businesses at the market and beyond. But in terms of the cost, you know, a lot of those vendors are very committed to not only selling locally, but also finding supply chains that go into their products locally. So Sonia did definitely highlight that very common trend. The other thing that happens, I think, with local producers, farmers, vendors, they have a little bit more consistency in terms of what their inputs costs are, because they may be purchasing seeds for the season, for example. You know, they have a bit more predictability, less fluctuations. The goods are not traveling as far. They're not affected by cross-border pricing or shipping costs because they are local. So there are exceptions to that, but there's a lot of consistency and predictability in terms of pricing of goods into farmers market products and then to the consumer as well. You know, obviously farmers and fruit producers are at the mercy of other factors as well, labor costs, etc. But generally, it's a little bit more predictable, I would say, than the typical grocer.
Let's go to Joe and Mackenzie. Joe, thanks for waiting on the line. What do you make of the tariff reprieve and the effort to buy a Canadian?
Hi there. The tariff reprieve to me is just essentially a nonsensical, deranged orange man, essentially trying to rattle our neurology, trying to shock us to the point where we're so confused that we just don't know what to do. And what I'm hearing, actually, and I'm in Mackenzie, so it's you know, I'm in the dead center of conservative country, and this is political because you know, we go one way, I think we're gonna see that 51st state quicker than we expect. If we go the other way, I think we might have a chance with Canada. However, now regarding the shopping situation, I was shopping in my local shopping place, the Co-op in Mackenzie, and there's really not much. I mean, it's the individual. You have to find out for yourself. You got to read the labels. And myself, along with reading the labels, I will go and I will talk to management. And I will basically get to the bottom. Is this Canadian? Because it's that important. And I think that a place like the Mackenzie Co-op should really help the customer, even though we're all going to hurt from this, right? So everybody's going to have to take some of the sacrifice, and that means them too. And to the district of Mackenzie, I say, you know, check your contract. Who are your American customers? Are you contracting these resources out to Americans? If you are, stop it now. Thank you.
Joe, we appreciate your call. Joe and Mackenzie, I want to get to some emails, and I'm going to go to Heather, and we'll get to those other calls. From Judith, who says, buy Canadian. I want to buy more Canadian and non-American products, but like more information on how food is imported from other countries. We do get a lot of produce from South America. Does that travel through the U.S.? What about European and Asian imports? Does anything come directly to Canadian ports without going through the U.S.? I've had a hard time finding information on this and wonder if there are good sources on this. Off the top of my head, Judith, for you, madeinca.ca has been doing some work on this. Madeinca.ca, give that a try. And Ava says, in order to show the power-tripping Trump that his actions are insulting to Canadians, our economic shopping power needs need to be assertive. Be selective in shopping only with other countries and Canadians, not the U.S. We'll get to Jean in a moment. Heather, I see you nodding along there. Certainly there are some products at farmers markets and beyond that people can buy. They're local, they're Canadian. They may be within that 100-mile, 100-kilometer diet that we've talked about. Other products, though, when we talk about made in Canada or sourced, may have other components from other countries. It might be Mexico. It might be the U.S. So it can be difficult to find purely Canadian stuff, right?
Well, I think one of the things that we love about our member farmers markets is there's some assurance with the vendors who sell at a BCFM, that's our association member, farmers market, the 145 I mentioned, that the vendor there is a resident of British Columbia as a business or a person, and what they're producing is made in BC. So there's a level of assurance that all of the vendors who are in that farmers market would be based in British Columbia, having produced that good or food product or other good with in British Columbia. And we do have some things like, imported goods or foods or ingredients that go into some of those food products. So like banana bread. So we may have a local baker vendor who's got fantastic banana bread. The bananas obviously are not grown in British Columbia yet. Unfortunately, with climate change, that might be possible one day, sadly. However, the banana bread maker is a British Columbia person, entrepreneur, and they are, baking that in their home bakery or a commercial kitchen somewhere in that local community and selling it back out. So there is some assurance, and I think this trade tariff problem has really, I think, daylighted for some folks who may not have been thinking about farmers markets, going, hey, if I go there, I know that I am getting a British Columbia Canadian product there with assurance. And I think that's great for our local food and local economy sector. Dan, if you don't mind, if I just build on the economic impact. So we did a huge provincial economic impact study, one of 3 over the last 20 years. In 2023. So farmers markets collectively generate $232 million in economic impact over the province of British Columbia. That's one province in 1 year. And for every dollar spent in a farmers market, it's about a 1.5 multiplier in terms of local economic impact. So it brings big bang to your buck. Collectively, it generates a lot of money in this province. And if we could double that by more people shopping at farmers markets, supporting their local farm food vendors, just think of the impact we could make in terms of those local economies or a provincial economy, frankly. We have almost 5 million visits to farmers markets per year. And what that represents is incredible. Not to mention all the spin-off. We know from that study, for example, that a shopper who goes to a market spends X dollars, $232 million worth of impact, $155 million in sales every year, and then spends another $118 million, that same shopper, at adjacent businesses in the neighborhood. So shopping local matters in terms of keeping money, supporting our communities, providing jobs, supporting our food lands and farmers for the long term. It's good. It's a good, sensible, values-based choice, and I think this tariff situation has definitely got people thinking in that direction.
We're going to get to Turley. Hang on the line. Want to encourage any more callers. Give us a call. What do you think about the 30-day pause on tariffs? Are you trying to buy more Canadian? Are you going to farmers markets? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733 in Metro Vancouver, pound 690 on your cell phone. Email us, and many of you have, bctoday@cbc.ca. Turley is joining us. Let me just check. Forgive me. There, from Vernon. Turley, what do you think of the tariff pause and buying Canadian?
Basically, I've been buying Canadian since 2017. I have not bought anything that's not coming into our, yes, it's coming in from a country that we deal with and who respect us.
And are you good?
It's much easier than you think it is. First, we'll get off the top. I'm retired, so I have the time, but it doesn't take you long to start identifying.
Okay, Turley, that's good advice. We appreciate
it. Easier than anybody thinks.
Thank you, Turley, and we appreciate your call. Let's go to Kyle and Salmon Arm. Kyle, are you trying to buy Canadian, and what do you think about the pause on tariffs?
Yeah, well, we're going through a big renovation right now, and so we're kind of trying to take advantage of this 30-day pause and anything we have to get from the States, ordering it now, but we're really looking hard at what we can source from Canada doing so. My point is, looking at online retailers, it's kind of hard sometimes. You have callers saying it's pretty easy, but if you're just doing a quick search for a bunch of different things that you need, it can be kind of hard. And, if there was some way that retailers could put a made by filter, on their website, and you could see, or manufactured in kind of filter, they have these made, this brand or this price range or these dimensions that you can filter all your search results. But if there was something that said, manufactured in Canada, I think that people would use that, and that would drive up sales here through the roof. If you make it easy for people to know what they're buying where it's manufactured, I think at this point there's a large.
And Kyle, when it comes to those substitutions, how successful have you been in finding Canadian-made or Canadian-sourced products?
Well, I mean, we're in the middle of something, so on the fly, it hasn't been that easy. But it went from something we weren't even considering to something that we're actively taking some time and looking into. So, I think a lot more people are willing to even put a little bit more effort in the current situation.
And are you tempted or enticed to go to your local farmers market to get the produce that you might get at a grocery store now?
Oh, absolutely, and we have a bunch of local little private farms that sell eggs and tomatoes and cucumbers and whatnot, and it's so easy to go there, and I think they're gonna be having business through the roof these days, I think.
That's great. Thank you very much for your call, Kyle. Last call, we're going to go to Matt in Campbell River. Matt, if you can keep it short, please. We're a little short for time. You're a farmer vendor.
Yeah, so I'm actually a mushroom farmer here in Campbell River. So we're part of the farmers market here, and we've made the effort to try and produce local produce for the local economy. So I'd like to say we buy all of our stuff, everything we use to produce our products, we can buy locally. We know it's sourced within BC. And then any jobs we create is also going to be local. So all this money is supporting our local economy. So whether, obviously we're really unhappy about these tariffs, and everyone at all times should do their best to shop locally. But, I think at these important times, it's really good for people to make the extra effort to do so. And also, we sort of say that we hugely appreciate the community and the support of all the people who do make the effort to do it, because it makes it so that we can provide these products for you more locally, more environmentally friendly, just have more economic impact for our local community and ourselves.
Matt, we appreciate your call. We're right up against it. Heather Thomas, the Executive Director of the BC Association for Farmers Markets, thank you so much for joining us. And O'Hara, my apologies, and visit BC Farmers Market trail.com to discover the farmers markets across BC. Thanks so much for joining us on BC Today.